Gotta get my hair out of my face. Oops. How's everybody doing tonight? Give me a second. Oh, I got the wrong glasses on too. Oh my goodness. I hope everybody's doing well tonight. Oh, okay. Let us. Okay. Hey, Game Queen. How's it going? I just got to pull up my book here. Or my page, I mean. What the heck? Okay. How's everybody doing tonight? Hi, Renita. Okay, let me just, I got to plug my camera in. I got a beautiful gift in the mail. I got a garden tracker book so that I can track what I plant, how it does from one year to the next. It's really, really beautiful. And I'll be doing it when I start my seeds. I'll be showing that book to you probably tomorrow on our half-acre homestead. Oh, goodness. Goodness golly, Miss Molly. Okay. Manage videos. Live. There we are. There we are.
I started using custom hair care products.
Okay. And whoops. Oh, why that did that? Hi, everybody. How's it going? Renita, Linda, Weedbee, Game Queen, Lilia, Lisa. Hello, hello, hello. Hello, 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 hello. Welcome to... Oh, excuse me. Welcome to Little Town on the Prairie, Chapter 6, The Month of Roses. All through that lovely month of June, Laura sewed shirts. Wild roses were blooming in the great sweeps of pink through the prairie grasses. But Laura saw them only in the early mornings when she and Pa were hurrying to work. The soft morning sky was changing to a clearer blue, and already a few wisps of summer cloud were trailing across it. The roses scented the wind, and along the road the fresh blossoms with their new petals and golden centers looked up like little faces. We get wild roses growing along our ditches all over the place here. And they're just like 4 pink petals with a yellow center. They're very pretty. At noon, she knew great white cloud puffs would be sailing in the sparkling blue. Their shadows would... Excuse me. Their shadows would drift across the blowing grasses and fluttering roses. But at noon, she would be in the noisy kitchen. At night, when she came home, the morning's roses were faded and their petals were scattering on the wind. Still, she was too old now to play anymore. She was all of 14. And it was wonderful to think that already she was earning good wages. Every Saturday night, Mrs. White counted out $1.50, and Laura took it home to Ma. "I don't like to take all your money, Laura," Ma said at once. It does seem that you should keep some for yourself." "Why, Ma? What for?" Laura asked. "I don't need anything." Her shoes were still good. She had stockings and underwear, and her calico dress was almost new. All the week she could look forward to the pleasure of bringing home her wages to Ma. She often thought, too, that this was only the beginning. In 2 more years, she would be 16, old enough to teach school. Okay, never mind. If she studied hard and faithfully and got a teacher's certificate and then got a school to teach, she would be a real help to Ma and Pa. Then she could begin to repay them for all that it had cost to provide for her since she was a baby. Like she had a choice in being born. Sorry. Then surely they could send Mary to college. Sometime she almost asked Ma if she could not somehow manage to send Mary to college now, counting on her earnings later to help keep Mary there. Oh, excuse me, folks. I'm really, really sorry. It's I had a shower earlier and it makes me want to go to bed. She never quite spoke of it for fear Ma would say it was too great of a chance to take. Still, the faint hope kept her going more cheerfully to town to work. Her wages were a help. She knew that Ma saved every penny that could be saved, and Mary would go to college as soon as Pa and Ma could possibly send her. The town was like a sore on a beautiful wild prairie. Old haystacks and manure piles were rotting around the stables. The backs of the store's false fronts were rough and ugly. The grass was worn now even from 2nd Street, and gritty dust blew between the buildings. The town smelled of staleness and dust and smoke and fatty odor of cooking. A dank smell. Now, do you remember me saying words have power and that we are misusing the language? A dank smell came from the saloon. Dank means damp and mildewy smelling. And musty sourness from the ground by the back doors where dishwater was thrown out. But after you had been in town a little while, you did not smell its smells, and there was some interest in seeing strangers go by. The boys and girls that Laura met in town last winter were not there now. They had gone out to stay on homestead claims. The storekeepers stayed in town to run their stores and batch in the rooms behind them, while the wives and children lived all summer long on the prairie in claim shanties. For the law was that a man could not keep a homestead claim unless his family lived on it 6 months of every year for 5 years. Also, he must keep 10 acres of the sod broken up and planted to crops for 5 years before the government would give him a title to the land. But nobody could make a living from that wild land. So the women and the girls stayed all summer in the claim shanties to satisfy the law, and the boys broke the sod and planted the crops while the fathers built the town and tried to make money enough to buy food and tools from the east. The more Laura saw of the town, the more she realized how well off her own family was. That was because Pa got a whole year's start ahead of the others. He had broken sod last year. Now they had a garden, an oat field, and the second planting of corn was growing quite well in the sod. Hay would feed the stock through the winter, and Pa could sell the corn and the oats to buy coal. All the new settlers were beginning now where Pa had begun a year ago. When Laura looked up from her work, she could see almost the whole town because nearly all the buildings were in those 2 blocks across the street. All their false fronts stood up, square-cornered at different heights, trying to make believe that the buildings were 2 stories high. Mr. Mead's hotel at the end of the street, and Beardsley's hotel almost opposite Laura, and Tinkman's furniture store near the middle of the next block really did have 2 stories. Curtains fluttered at their upstairs windows and showed how honest those buildings were in that row of false fronts. That was the only difference between them and the other buildings. They were all of pine lumber beginning to weather gray. From each building had 2 tall glass windows in front and a door between them. Each door was open now to the warm weather, and every doorway was filled with a strip of faded pink mosquito netting tacked onto the framework to make a screen door. In front of them all ran the level board sidewalk, and all along its edges were hitching posts. There was always a few horses in sight, tied here and there to the posts, and sometimes a wagon with a team of horses or oxen. Once in a while, when she bit off a thread, Laura saw a man cross the street, untie his horse, swing onto it, and ride away. Sometimes she heard a team and wagon, and when the sounds were loudest, she glanced up and saw it passing by. One day, an outburst of confused shouting startled her. She saw a tall man come bursting out of Brown's saloon. The screen door loudly slammed shut behind him. With great dignity, the man turned about. He looked haughtily at the screen door, and lifting one long leg, he thrust his foot contemptuously through the pink mosquito netting. It tore jaggedly from top to bottom. A yell of protest came out of the saloon. The tall man paid no attention whatever to the yell. He turned haughtily away and saw in front of him a round little short man. The short man wanted to go into the saloon. The tall man wanted to walk away, but each was in front of the other. The tall man stood very tall and dignified. The short man stood puffed out with dignity. In the doorway, the saloon keeper complained about the torn screen door. Neither of them paid any attention to him. They looked at each other and grew more and more dignified. Suddenly, the tall man knew what to do. He linked his long arm in the little man's fat arm, and they came down the sidewalk together singing, "Pull for the shore, sailor, pull for the shore. Heed not the stormy winds." The tall man solemnly lifted his long leg and thrust his foot through Hawthorne's screen door. A yell came out. "Hey there, what the?" The two men went on singing. Though loudly they roar, pull for the shore, sailor. They were as dignified as could be. The tall man's long legs made the longest possible steps. The puffed-out little man tried with dignity to stretch his short legs to steps as long. "Heed not the stormy winds." The tall man gravely thrust his foot through the mosquito netting of Beardsley's hotel door. Mr. Beardsley came boiling out. The man marched solemnly on. Though loudly they roar. Laura was laughing so tears ran out of her eyes. She saw the long, slim leg rip the mosquito netting in front of Barker's grocery. Mr. Barker popped out protesting. The long legs stalking and short legs gravely stretching went away from him haughtily. "Pull for the shore." The tall man's foot pushed through the screen door of Wilder's feed store. Royal Wilder yanked it open and said what he thought. The two men stood listening gravely until he stopped for breath. Then the fat little man said with great dignity, "My name is Prairie, and I'm drunk." They went on arm in arm, chanting those words. First the pudgy man, "My name is Prairie," and then both together like bullfrogs, "and I am drunk." The tall man would not say his name was T.P. Pryor, but he always came in solemnly, "I am drunk." They wheeled square about and marched into the other saloon. Its screen door slammed loudly behind them. Laura held her breath, but that one door's mosquito netting stayed smooth and whole. Laura laughed till her sides ached. She could not stop when Mrs. White snapped out that it was a disgrace to snakes what men would do with liquor in them. "Think of the cost of all those screen doors," Mrs. White said. "I'm surprised at you. Young folks nowadays seem to have no realizing sense." That evening when Laura tried to describe those two men so that Mary could see them, no one laughed. "Good gracious, Laura, how could you laugh at drunken men?" Ma wanted to know. "I think it was dreadful," said Mary. Pa said the tall one was Bill O'Dowd. "I know for a fact that his brother brought him to a claim out here to keep him from drinking. 2 saloons in this town are just 2 saloons too many." It's a pity more men don't say the same," said Ma. I begin to believe that if there isn't a stop put to liquor traffic, women must bestir themselves and have something to say about it." Pa twinkled at her. "Seems to me you have plenty to say, Caroline. Ma never left me in doubt as to the evil of drink, nor you either." "Be that as it may," said Ma, "it's a crying shame that such things can happen before Laura's very eyes." Pa looked at Laura, and his eyes were still twinkling. Laura knew that he didn't blame her for laughing. Now, hi, everybody. How's it going? Do you want chapter 7? And I will wait. I must have 3. Okay, there's 11 people here. I must have at least 5 yeses. Or I'm just going to go behind the fan and wait for my yeses. Now, where the heck did my lighter? Oh, there it is. Excuse me. You like my tree? goodness. Oh, I got Freaky Friday next. Well, actually, it's Sassy Saturday, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Thank you. 6. Say that's 6. That's good enough. Oh, excuse me. Yes, it's for Valentine's Day. Oh, excuse me. Oh. Chapter 7. $9. Mr. Clancy was not getting so many orders for shirts. It seemed that most of the men who could buy shirts that year had bought them. One Saturday evening, Mrs. White said, "The spring rush seems to be over." "Yes, ma'am," said Laura. Mrs. White counted out $1.50 and gave it to her. "I won't be needing you anymore, so you needn't come on Monday morning. Goodbye." "Goodbye," Laura said. She had worked 6 weeks and earned $9. $1 seemed a great deal of money only 6 weeks ago, but now $9 was not enough. If she could have earned only 1 more week's wages, that would have been $10.50, or 2 weeks would have been a whole $12. She knew how good it would be to stay at home again, to help with the housework and do the chores and work in the garden, and go walking with Mary and gather wild flowers, and to look forward to Pa's homecoming at night. But somehow she felt cast out and hollow inside. Slowly she went along the path beside Main Street. Pa was working on the building at the corner of 2nd. He stood by a stack of shingles waiting for Laura. When he saw her, he sang out, "Look what we've got to take home to your ma." In the shade of the shingles stood a bushel basket covered with a grain sack. Inside it was a small rasping of claws and cheeping chorus. Beep, beep, beep. The chickens. "Both brought 'em in today," said Pa. 14 of 'em, all healthy and thriving. His whole face was beaming with anticipation of Ma's delight. He told Laura, "The basket's not heavy. You take one handle and I'll take the other, and we'll carry 'em level between us." They went down Main Street and out on the road toward home, carrying the basket carefully between them. Sunset was flaming in crimson and burning gold over the whole sky. The air was filled with golden light, and Silver Lake on the east was blazing like fire. Up from the basket came the chickens' wondering and anxious cheeping. Mrs. White doesn't want me anymore," Laura said. "Yes, I guess the spring rush is about over," said Pa. Laura had not thought that Pa's job might end. "Oh, Pa, won't there be any more carpenting either? Carpentering either," she said. "Well, we couldn't expect it to last all summer," said Pa. "Anyway, I'll have to be making hay pretty soon." After a while, Laura said, "I only earned $9, Pa." $9 is nothing to sneeze at," said Pa. "You've done good work, too, and fully satisfied Mrs. White, haven't you?" "Yes." "Then it's a good job well done," said Pa. It was true that there was some satisfaction. Laura felt a little better. Besides, they were taking chickens to Ma. Ma was delighted when she saw them. Carrie and Grace crowed to peep at them in the basket, and Laura told Mary about them. They were healthy, lively chicks, with bright black eyes and bright yellow claws. Already the down was coming off of them, leaving naked patches on their necks, and the sprouting feathers were showing on their wings and tails. They were every color that chickens are, and some were spotted. Ma lifted each one carefully into her apron. "Mrs. Boast cannot have got all these from one hatching," she said. "I don't believe there's not more than 2 cockerels among them. The Boasts have got such a head start with chickens. Likely they're planning to eat fryers this summer." Sorry, folks, I've got to open my window a little bit here. Oh, shoot, I locked it. Ooh. Okay. Okay. It may be she took out a few cockerels out of this flock, looking on them as meat. Yes, and replace them with pullets that will be layers, Ma guessed. It would be Mrs. Boast all over. A more generous woman never lived. She carried the chicks in her apron to set them out one by one into the coop that Pa had already made. It had a front of laths to let air in and sun, and a little door with a wooden button to fasten it. It had no floor, but was set on clean grass that the chicks could eat. And when the grass grew trampled and dirty, the coop could be moved to fresh grass. We call them lawn tractors, or chicken tractors, we call them. In an old pie pan, Ma mixed a crumbly bran mash, well peppered. She set it in the coop, and the chicks crowded onto it, gobbling up the bran mash so greedily, sometimes they tried to swallow their own toes by mistake. When they could eat no more, they perched on the edge of the water pan, scooping up water in their beaks. They stretched up their necks and tilted back their heads to swallow it, saying, "Thank you, God, for every sip." Ma said it would be Carrie's task to feed them often and to keep their water pan filled with cool, fresh water. Tomorrow she would let the chicks out to run, and it would be Grace's part to keep a sharp lookout for hawks. After supper that evening, she sent Laura to make sure that the chicks were sleeping safely. All the stars were shining over the dark. See, I would have put them chicks and their coop in the stable at night. All the stars were shining over the dark prairie grass. I mean, seriously, folks, I had locks and chicken wire. Okay? And I still lost 40 almost full grown meat birds 2 weeks before they were ready for butchering. But I guess out there, I mean, and yet when I lived in Colborne, Ontario, I never had a problem with raccoons or anything like that. My chicken coop door was left open all night, every night. The dark grasses were breathing softly, asleep in the quiet night. Laura's hand felt gently over the sleeping chicks, huddled warm together in a corner of the coop. Then she stood looking at the summer night. She did not know how long she stood there until she saw Ma coming from the house. "Oh, there you are, Laura," Ma said softly. As Laura had done, she knelt and put her hand through the coop's door to feel the huddled chicks. Then she too stood looking. "The place begins to look like a farm," she said. The oat field and the cornfield were shadowy pale in the darkness, and the garden was bumpy with the lumps of dark leaves. Like pools of faint starshine among them spread the cucumber vines and the pumpkins. The low sod stable could hardly be seen, but from the house window a warm yellow light shone out. Suddenly, without thinking at all, Laura said, "Oh, Ma, I do wish Mary could go to college this fall." Unexpectedly, Ma replied, "It may be that she can. Your Pa and I have been talking of it." Laura could not speak for a minute, and then she asked, Have you said anything to her?" "Not yet," said Ma. "We must not raise hopes only to be disappointed. But with Pa's wages and the oats and the corn, if nothing goes wrong, we think she can go this fall. We must trust ourselves to contrive to keep her there till she finishes the full 7 years course, both college and manual training." Then, for the first time, Laura realized now that when Mary went to college, she would be going away. Mary would be gone all day long. Mary would not be there. Laura could not think what living would be without Mary. "Oh, I wish," she began, and then stopped. She had been so eagerly hoping for Mary to go to college. "Yes, we will miss her," Ma said steadily. "But we must think what a great opportunity it will be for her." "I know, Ma," said Laura miserably. The night was large and empty now. The light shining from the house was warm and steady, but even home would not be the same when Mary was not there. Then Ma said, "Your $9 are a great help, Laura. I've been planning, and I do believe that with $9, I can buy the goods for Mary's best dress and perhaps the velvet to make her a hat. Thank you for joining me for 2 chapters of Little Town on the Prairie. I heard the pepper keeps other animals from eating the feed. Really, I never thought of that. Huh, I've often wondered that. Thank you all for hanging out with me. Patrons, it is Freaky Friday on Sassy Saturday at 9 p.m. EST. I'll see you all there. And maybe tomorrow or the next day, we'll do another couple of chapters, okay? Thanks for hanging out with me. I love reading, and I love these stories. Take care. God bless. Poke, poke.